Hello, I'm XPLovecat. Welcome to my Masks of Nyarlathotep series. There is going to be a ton of spoilers in this video, so if you don't want spoilers, check out my spoiler-free review of Masks of Nyarlathotep. And if you're just now starting to get prepared for this campaign, I have a video all about preparing for Masks of Nyarlathotep and what you should do before you even get into planning the individual chapters. However, this video is going to be all about Peru, which is the prologue, and my top keeper tips for how to prepare, what to do during gameplay, and the best way to play some of these NPCs and get through the locations. Let's dive into Peru. So this location was actually added in the most recent edition of Masks, and it is a prologue that gives the players a chance to meet and get connected to your quest giver, so to speak. Jackson Elias, he is the person that actually sets things in motion for Masks and get investigators on the right track for investigating everything that's happening in this campaign. So this Peru gives an opportunity for you to feel a little bit more connected with Jackson and set the scene for how the campaign's actually going to play. This takes place 4 years before the actual campaign, so 1921. And this is the shortest of all the chapters. This can be completed most likely in about 2 sessions. That's what it took for us. It could bleed over into 3, or they could go through things pretty quickly and do it in 1. So is it worth your time to actually play through the prologue? For me, I think that Peru is fine either way. If you play it or you don't play it, you're going to be fine throughout the campaign. So the benefits and reasons why you should consider playing Peru is, number 1, you really want to experience all this book has to offer. There's a ton of good content all the way through it. And so if you completely skip a chapter, you might feel like you're missing out. If that's you, then definitely go ahead and prepare and play Peru. Another reason would be maybe you want to feel more connected to the story and make your players feel more connected. You might have players that feel like they need a specific motivation to go through with certain scenarios or make certain decisions. If that's your group's play style, then it might be best to introduce Jackson in this prologue. Something helpful about running Peru is it actually gave me a chance to warm up a little bit. If you are newer to Call of Cthulhu, or if you haven't been a keeper for a while, this gives you an opportunity to do kind of what I would say is a warm-up chapter. It's more straightforward, and you're getting a chance to test the waters and try out different things and actually set the tone for what the campaign is going to be like. If there are any players after this prologue that don't think they're going to enjoy it based on Peru, then that's a great opportunity for them to drop out and find a group that might be better for them. I would also recommend playing it if you have any new players in your group, because it's a good chance for them to start learning the rules, and it's okay to kind of take breaks in this Peru scenario to be able to look up certain things. So I think that's a good chance if you have anyone new or you're trying to get back into the swing of playing Call of Cthulhu. Reasons you might consider skipping this chapter would be you have a condensed timeline. You know you're not going to be able to play the full campaign, but you really want to experience Masks of Nyarlathotep. In that case, I would not play Peru and head straight for America. The other scenario is maybe you're just super excited to get straight into the story. You don't really care about getting connected to Jackson. You don't care about that stuff. You just want to get straight into this core story that you've heard all the exciting things about. If that's the case, feel free to skip Peru as well. Okay, so let's start planning. My first tip for you is to make sure that you read the conclusions and rewards section first. This will give you some direction of what the main goals for the investigators are. The country of Peru, the cities and the setting that this is taking place is pretty straightforward. The only major call out is when they get to Puno, which is where the pyramids are. There's a chance that they suffer from sunstroke, and they're also going to have to make con rolls for potential altitude sickness. So make a mental note or a physical note of those things so that you don't forget to add some of the weather and conditions to your gameplay. So I usually try to pick 1 or 2 things that are really unique about each of the cults to make sure that they feel different from country to country. I found that it was easy for the cults to kind of blend together. So making sure that you identify what those really unique things are about each of the cults will help add flavor to them and make them differentiated from the other cults in this campaign. Now, lucky for us, the Karasari, which is the cult in Peru, is inherently unique in that they are converting people by ingesting larvae, and that is actually what makes them a cult member, instead of them being just normal humans that have succumbed to power, willpower roles, and those kind of things. So these larvae are actually taking over bodies and converting them into worshipping the father of maggots. Every time the Karasari feed on humans, they regurgitate some of their meal into this pyramid that the investigators are going to be able to sustain and feed this father of maggots. The other super cool thing about this cult is their monstrous form is super unique, and they leave a really cool mark on any of their victims. So spend a little bit of time getting familiar with this monstrous form so that you can describe it in all of its glory if your investigators encounter one. Let's talk about the NPCs. So there are two major ones that I want to call out. The first is obviously Jackson Elias. He is someone that you want to make sure you are very welcoming to the other investigators and you're trying to actually build a friendship with them. In the future, he's going to reach out to these investigators and have them help him with a specific route of investigation that he's working on. So being able to have that foundation of a friendship is really important. Opportunities to do that would be role-playing, making conversation, but also using Jackson as someone who is looking out for the investigators, is helping them where needed, and introducing them to different people throughout this scenario. And if there is ever a person that deserves plot armor, it is Jackson. So Jackson Elias needs to stay alive for this campaign to actually work and the connection for the prologue to be worth it. One of the really interesting things about Elias is that he is quite skeptical. Despite writing a bunch of books on cults, he doesn't really believe in the mythos. So being confronted by possibly one of those Karasaris in their monstrous form might actually be a turning point for Jackson in that his whole world is kind of disrupted. So in the beginning of the scenario, really focusing on his skepticism and bringing logic to everything, but then potentially having a turning point is interesting and fun to play as an NPC. The other key NPC is Augustus Larkin, and he is actually possessed by Nyarlathotep. I actually found that playing him was the most interesting part of this chapter, and the most fun for me to push a little bit and role play something really interesting. Nyarlathotep is actually slowly killing him by rotting his insides, and Larkin takes a lot of hard drugs to be able to suppress the pain from this happening. My top tip for Larkin is to make sure you give a really solid description when the players first meet him, and continue to describe as the scenario goes on, maybe some changes in him, and if Nyarlathotep comes to the forefront, that immediate change of looking like very healthy, unlike what he is when he's suffering from Nyarlathotep taking over his body. So an example of this would be as the players are first meeting Larkin for dinner. The man's skin is so pale, there's dark circles under his eyes. His clothes are really baggy, almost like he's lost a lot of weight pretty quickly. You see sweat coming down his face, and there are marks under his armpits on his back, and there's a strong smell that comes. It's first kind of like a cologne smell, but then immediately after there's a hint of bad rotten meat that hits your tongue. Anything to make it obvious that this is a sick man. And body language is really important here. So when he's in this painful state, he's not going to be sitting up straight. He's going to be slouching and not feeling very well, but trying his best to be welcoming and trying his best to make sure that the investigators are interested in this expedition, but having to take breaks and having to compose himself and try to sit up, but then can't do it for very long, and wiping away the sweat. And these movements will get you in his body and kind of get you being able to portray what's happening to this person. Larkin probably isn't going to be very long at dinner. Once he gives the information, he's going to go back to his hotel room, and Elias has an opportunity to get drinks with the investigators and start to make that camaraderie and friendship. The other two callouts about Larkin is he has some confused memories. As Nyarlathotep is taking over his body, it's messing with his mind as well. So there might be times of confusion for him, and that's an also interesting aspect to kind of role play and know that the investigators are going going to start wondering what's going on with him. The book also mentions that when Nyarlathotep comes to the forefront and takes over his body, that he can have any spell he wants. But the two spells that I think are most relevant for this scenario, and the only ones you should really need, are Implant Fear and Mental Suggestion. Let's talk about the specific locations that are important for the scenario. The first is the bar in which everyone first meets. We talked already about building camaraderie and giving the base for the scenario, but I did want to mention a really funny story that happened with my group. As Larkin was showing off 2 of his artifacts that he got from a farmer, one of my players actually fumbled their roll for Spot Hidden to look at it and dropped and broke the artifact. What a way to start off the campaign. In general, just keep in mind at the bar, this is really your first chance to set the tone for the campaign, give them a chance to role play, and start playing Larkin as a really interesting NPC. Jackson is probably going to stay in the background a little bit and more observe during the conversation, but then afterwards can start showing his personality and his skepticism with all the other investigators after Larkin leaves. The next key location is the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. And this is where, in theory, the undergrad student gets murdered and potentially Sanchez gets taken over by a larva and converted to the cult. This is the plan by D. Mendoza, who's working with Larkin. And there's a lot of different ways that this part in the scenario can work itself out. And the chapter does a really good job of explaining those different options and how to handle each of them. So spend a good amount of time looking through this specific section and familiarizing yourself with maybe some of the different options. And know that usually whatever's going to happen is going to work out in one way or the other. So you don't really have to railroad your players into doing anything because it's going to work out really no matter what path happens during this section. So Rizzo, the undergrad, might unfortunately get murdered. And if she does, then there's going to be a clue on her body that the players can get. Otherwise, they would hopefully be able to convince her to give them information if she ended up staying alive. And then Sanchez may or may not be converted, which is another fun interaction for later at the pyramids. Basically, the thing to keep in mind here is where do the players need to end up, and that is eventually to the pyramid. So they need to gather some information and some clues to motivate them to continue with the expedition and figure out what's going on. Hopefully they'll gather enough information to know that they need to restore part of the pyramid to stop whatever is happening. If they don't, you can use Elias to drop some additional hints, but if they end up not getting that point altogether, I still think it's okay because they'll eventually get to the pyramid and see there's a crack and hopefully figure out what to do from there. The investigators will move on to Puno, and there's various things, people that they can talk to get a little bit more information, but eventually all roads lead back to the ruins and the pyramid, which is the climax of the scenario. So they're going to travel from Puno to the pyramid. It's a 3-day travel, and there's different encounters that happen over those 3 days. But my tip is to just kind of watch the room, make sure everyone's still engaged. If they're not really having fun with this travel situation, knock it down to 2 days. It's not going to hurt anything. Just feel out the table at this point in time. When investigators reach the pyramid, make sure to utilize the map because it does a great job of laying out the entrances and the key things that they're going to encounter when they're underneath this pyramid. The whole tone of this part when they first arrive is mystery and exploration, really getting them to uncover this pyramid and go on the expedition that they originally were signed up for. If Larkin is still alive, then the really interesting part of the scenario is trying to stop the investigators from fixing the pyramid. At this point, Nyarlathotep is probably going to come to the surface and start to do some mental suggestion and get the investigators to break up, and so they're not actually going to achieve their goal. I would not recommend putting up any huge combat or anything that's really going to kill the investigators at this point, because part of this prologue concept is that they're going to be the people in 1925 who are reached out to continue the campaign. Now, of course, you can't help it if something happens and one or two of the investigators die, but I'm saying don't put anything major up against your players that they would have a lot of trouble killing. Now, if Larkin is not alive at this point, my recommendation is to up the stakes a little bit on some of the other aspects of the pyramid. So this includes really playing up the sanity loss from the body pit, maybe upping that sanity loss a little bit, making sure that the larva attack is pretty intense, maybe adding an additional larva depending on your group size, and having them really feel the presence of the father of maggots as they're trying to seal the ward, provoking another sanity roll. So the concept here is Larkin is really the main climax, but if he's already died because of other circumstances, then play up those other elements to add sanity loss and really up the creepy factor that's happening in this pyramid. Now, often through this campaign with the different countries, your players or even yourself might be wondering, when is it time to move on and go to the next chapter? Fortunately, with Peru, it's a pretty straightforward answer. Once they wrap up the pyramid situation, then their main goals with this chapter is to build that connection with Jackson Elias and get a taste for how the campaign's going to run. There are no specific clues that they need to acquire to be able to move to the next phase of the campaign. So that is it for Peru. Those are my top tips. I hope that this helps you prepare. And please subscribe if you are looking forward to the other chapter deep dives. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that you wish that I covered that I didn't, because I'm making this for you to make sure that you can play Masks to the best of your ability. Have fun and thank you for watching. Bye.